and choppy activity. Canola's steady to down $1. November down 90 cents at $475.50 per ton. Markets in the U.S. are closed today for the Independence Day long weekend, and the lack of direction from the Chicago Board of Trade kept Canadian traders to the sidelines as well. The November canola contract has improved sharply over the past week, but is now consolidating near the upper edge of its nearby trading range. The November contract, that resistance around $480. Weather conditions across the prairies remain mixed, with persistent rains in northern Alberta causing problems there, some flooding in parts of Manitoba, but drier weather generally in the eastern prairies. However, hot temperatures in the east could lead to some thunderstorm activity over the weekend. The Canadian dollar, it's steady in early trade, providing little direction. U.S. markets, they're all closed ahead of tomorrow's 4th of July holiday. Soybeans ended a bit softer yesterday, down 2 cents in November at $8.97 per bushel. Corn and wheat also down yesterday. September corn 7 cents lower on Thursday at $3.43 per bushel. Wheat futures, Chicago wheat down 7 cents in September at $4.92 per bushel. Kansas City wheat ending down 8.75 cents yesterday at $4.34 per bushel, and Minneapolis spring wheat, it lost 7.25 cents yesterday, settling at $5.10 After posting sharp gains in reaction to acreage data from the USDA earlier in the week, soybeans and corn both moved off their weekly highs, while acres for both crops did fail to meet expectations, they're still up on the year, and relatively favorable early condition ratings across the Midwest point to good yields. The U.S. winter wheat harvest is progressing at a good pace, and harvest pressure is accounting for some of the nearby weakness in those contracts lately. Spring wheat, meanwhile, it was down in sympathy with the other wheats, but there are some concerns over dryness in the northern growing regions. Weather conditions through the growing season will likely account for much of the direction in the U.S. grains and oilseeds over the next few weeks. That's a look at the ICE futures and U.S. markets for Friday, July 3rd. In Winnipeg, for Markets Farm, I'm Phil Franz Workington.
There are no such things as small chores on your farm, so you need equipment that works as hard as you do, especially during harvest season. That's where New Holland and Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John come in. During New Holland Harvest Days, get terrific deals on equipment to help you work more productively. Save with 0% financing and cashback offers on select tractors, hay tools, and harvesting equipment. Stop by Butler Farm Equipment in Fort St. John today for details. But hurry, Harvest Days ends September 30th, 2020.
The opinions expressed during this show do not represent those of this station. If you've missed any of this show, you can follow the podcast at energeticcity.ca. Now, an in-depth look at the news and information shaping our community. This is Moose Talks with your host, Doug Craig, on Moose FM.
Good morning and welcome to another episode of Moose Talks. Today we have one guest, but he's very important and we have quite a bit to talk about with him. Dan Davies, the MLA for Peace River North, is joining us, and he's joining us from Prince George today. So, Dan, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Hey, good morning, Doug. Happy to be here.
Excellent. All right, well, let's get right into it. We're going to talk a bit later about all the changes that have happened at the legislature since the session kind of reopened 2 weeks ago. But I thought we'd start a bit on the Old Fort landslide, since that's kind of still happening. The PRD filed a FOIP request with the provincial government for info pertaining to the 2018 Old Fort landslide. And the government says they kind of responded back and said they refused on the ground that it could possibly harm law enforcement. What do you know about this, and do you have any insight as to what that means or what the government's doing in this regard?
No, and to me, it's completely inappropriate that that they're not sharing this information. there's information in there, I'm sure, that can benefit the regional district, and certainly information in there that the residents should know. It's pretty bad when the Tyee newspaper can apply and get the FOI, and you get a local government that does the same and pretty much told to go pound sand. So completely inappropriate. We are going to be actually applying for an FOI as well ourselves through our own caucus, and hopefully get some information there. But it's completely not on and disrespectful to the people, especially the people of the that are going through so much.
Absolutely. I mean, this is sort of a tough situation because, of course, you're the MLA for this region where this is happening. You're not in government. You're in the opposition. I mean, what role do you have to play in this? I mean, you kind of just press the government to be more forthcoming with this information because, as you say, it's so unfair to the residents who are now going through this a second time.
Yeah, so there's a few things that that we're doing. Recently I hosted a meeting with the Minister of Transport, Claire Trevena. Had myself, Bob Zimmer, Brad Sperling, and an elected representative from the Old Fort. Excuse me. So discussing options moving forward. What does it look like for residents having access? Plans for the community and the road, if when is the road going to be reopened. Also going to be looking at there's so many questions. They had a town hall at Lido Theater, which I attended, and listening to some of the concerns, and you gotta ask a number of questions, of course. This slide happened almost 2 years ago, and you got to wonder what planning has been in place in the meantime leading up to this, and at this point it doesn't sound like there has been a lot, and which certainly raises some questions, especially for the residents that live in Old Fort. We have a meeting also lined up for next week. The same group of people will be meeting with Minister Mike Farnworth, the Minister of Public Safety, who's also oversees the Emergency Management BC, talking about some of the issues and such around people getting access to the community, and that doesn't matter, what it looks like if you're looking at getting access to services such as water and sewer, as most people down there, of course, are on septic systems and cisterns. So it's a complex issue. Really feel for all the residents, down at the Old Fort. Being that they just kind of got over the first time that this happened, and here we are again. And then, of course, we look outside and see the amount of rainfall that's happening, and there's certainly probably some anxiety around what is that going to do, and how is that going to impact the slide right now.
Okay. Now, speaking a bit about the government and their response to things, the reopening plan for BC is well underway, and the government is conducting a survey on how they should spend the $1.5 billion that they've earmarked for COVID-19 recovery. What do you think of the government's decision to conduct a survey on this when they have their economic recovery board council? I can't remember the name offhand. When they have all these sort of means of maybe already having these questions answered for them. Do you think it's good that they're asking people for their opinion on this?
Well, this is kind of the weird part. Here we are sitting, and this pandemic happened. When? We're going back end of January. Of course, everything came to a complete shutdown in March. Mm-hmm. Here we are in June. We just returned to the legislature. We have, as opposition, have been asking some pretty hard questions in the last few weeks, and it's time to be looking at the economy. It's time, and at the same time, of course, not forgetting about we are still in a crisis regarding the pandemic, but BC has fared pretty well overall. So when the questions start coming down, okay, it's time to start turning the economy back on and getting people back to work. And then to hear, the government say, yeah, we're going to do a survey now. We were dumbfounded. We don't feel that first of all, a survey was really required. As people have been reaching out. We've been sharing. I've had numerous people reach out to me, and my colleague MLAs, and we've been pushing that stuff up to government, saying, here's the word on the street. I know the government has had engaged in some discussions. So when they come out and say we're going to start a survey now for a couple months and we'll come up with some recommendations, well, ladies and gentlemen, we can't wait for a couple more months. People are already at the end of the rope, holding on to that knot they've tied on. We need answers. We need recommendations. We need a plan to move forward and safely get the economy going and safely get people back to work. I think I might have mentioned this the last time I was on your show, Dub. The Premier has created a economic task force, recovery task force, and the idea is great. This was done a couple months ago now, and but we had to criticize the government because of the makeup of this committee. Mm-hmm. And, we've written the government letters, we've written the Premier letters saying, right now the economic recovery for the province of British Columbia committee is made up of the Surrey Board of Trade, the Vancouver Board of Trade. You've got the nonprofit sector represented there. You got First Nations represented, and you've got the Chamber of Commerce, the Provincial Chamber of Commerce sitting on this. A good start, but far from, I think, hitting the mark regarding what we need to start the economy. Where's industry? Where are the people, on the ground that are being impacted by this the most? Where's the oil and gas sector? Where's the tourism sector? Where's the agriculture folks? Mining, forestry? Where are the people that, in our opinion, are going to be leading the way out of this, this economic disaster that we find ourselves in? Why do they not have a seat at the table? Mm-hmm. Where's rural BC? Where's northern BC? So there was lots of questions that we put forth to government saying, the idea of having this economic recovery committee was good, but it missed the mark and fell short, from what we really need to get going.
So what does recovery look like to you then in kind of your perfect world, if you were able to make all the decisions? I mean, is it you want the government to maybe spend all or a big chunk of that money on infrastructure spending, i.e. replacing the Taylor Bridge? Is it loosening restrictions further and faster so that businesses can make decisions to kind of move forward and kind of get the economy moving again? What are you hoping to see once the government finally, assuming they do, releases more of a plan on what's to happen next?
Well, first, loosening restrictions. I mean, that's going to be done in consult, obviously, with Dr. Henry, mm-hmm. Working around that. But, Dub, over the past few years, it's been crazy. We've seen, British Columbia lose its competitive edge. We are a blessed province, no doubt about it. We are so lucky. We have, an abundance of resources, and really all of them. We've got mining, mm-hmm. We've got, a forest sector, we've got agriculture, we've got fishing, we've got oil and gas, we've got tourism. I mean, we have everything. And over the past number of years, unfortunately, we've, seen the government's attitude on this, kind of put it all into the back seat and focus on the pie in the sky, I guess. We've increased taxation, we've increased red tape. Permits are now, I wouldn't say impossible, but they're well on the way to getting industry moving forward. So your question about what does economic recovery look like, to me, we need to embrace our industries. We need to get that competitive edge back again, because right now, the government is planning to tax their way out of this economic downturn. I don't know about you, but I'm taxed enough, and I'm pretty sure if you did a poll online, you'd be pretty much 100% people saying that there's no more to give. So we need to be looking at attracting capital dollars into British Columbia. Mm-hmm. And I've said on and over and over again, capital dollars are like water. They will take the path of least resistance, and unfortunately, British Columbia has a lot of resistance, because the whole wide world is digging themselves out of an economic catastrophe right now. So everybody is now looking at ways to be, how can we attract those capital dollars, the real, these real dollars that invest in people, that invest in our communities, that allow us to build hospitals and schools and keep our roads maintained. So we got to get competitive. We got to really look at how we are attracting these companies. And just last week in the legislature, government passed a bill around mining. Mm-hmm. To add more levels of bureaucracy, which is the exact opposite of what we need to do. And I'm not saying we need to, throw out our environmental, policies that we have in place. I don't think there's anybody that would. BC does things right. It doesn't matter if it's oil and gas, mining, or forestry. The rest of the world looks to us as leaders in the world in how to do resource extraction right. And, that's something that we need to embrace. That's something that we should be standing up on our milk crates singing about. But unfortunately, we have a government that, provincially and federally, that doesn't seem to be doing that right now. And we need to. If we don't, we are in big trouble.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk a bit about, you've got to said what you think right now and how you've been hammering the government on this, you and the Liberals. We're going to talk about how that looks in just a minute, because the legislature, as I said, open up. It is very different than it was when it shut down. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute when we return right here on Moose Talks.
You're shopping around for an automobile.
Come see Fort City Chrysler.
You're trying to find the very best deal.
Looking for a fine pre-owned vehicle? Fort City Chrysler has cars, trucks, minivans, and SUVs, four-wheel drive pickups, and diesels too. Many with remaining factory warranty. And they're all quality inspected and ready to go. At Fort City Chrysler, you're buying from your hometown dealer. No pressure, no hassles, just honesty and integrity. Only at Fort City Chrysler. Only in Fort St. John.
Everyone struggles with computers. New shortcuts, plug-and-play devices that don't play when you plug them, and more. Sit back and learn some stupid computer tricks with Vern from Computer Emporium across from the Northern Grand Hotel on 100th Avenue in Fort St. John.
Have you ever wanted to connect more than one monitor to your computer? Many computer users today have 2 or even 3 monitors connected to the same computer. This can easily be accomplished with today's full-featured video cards and or a variety of cables, adapters, and connectors. If you want more than one monitor on your computer, start by looking on the back of the computer tower for any and all video output ports. The common types of video port are the 15-pin VGA port, usually blue, the 24-pin DVI port, usually white, and the newer HDMI port, and possibly the latest called the display port. The display port kind of looks like an HDMI port, but with one flat side. If you find one or more of these ports on your computer, then you have all you need to connect a second monitor. They don't even have to be the same type of port, and usually aren't. If you have only one video output port, see the experts at Computer Emporium for a solution.
Stupid computer tricks with Vern from Computer Emporium, helping you use computers more efficiently. Is heard Monday to Saturday on Moose FM.
Hi, Vern here from Computer Emporium. Ink, toner, printers, laptops, gaming parts, and accessories. We have what you need when you need it. Put us to the challenge and we will deliver. See the advantage of shopping at Computer Emporium, helping you use computers more efficiently.
System Secure Locksmith has handled all types of locks on a variety of residential and commercial properties. We've tackled just about every kind of locksmithing issue and offer only the best commercial grade locks for our installations. Come see us on 100th Ave or find us online at systemsecurelocksmith.ca.
Watch this show live on Facebook or download the podcast at energeticcity.ca.
Welcome back to Moose Talks. We're talking with Dan Davies all about, well, a lot of things. We were talking about the economy just now, but I wanted to ask you about this, Dan. Yesterday, the Premier said that Americans driving through BC to Alaska shouldn't be stopping on the way and taking their time visiting, that sort of thing. What do you think of the Premier's comments? Do you think they're fair, or is that sort of unreasonable to think that Americans are just going to drive straight through BC to get home?
Well, I wouldn't say this too often, but I don't disagree with what the Premier said. Mm-hmm. We understand there is a need for Americans to travel. Certainly for work. I mean, the Alaska is certainly a unique situation that is divided by a big mass called British Columbia. Mm-hmm. So it's expected that, Americans will be traveling back and forth. But these visitors need also to understand that, these rules are in place. It's very clearly conveyed to them when they cross the border. They have to have their plans. So, when they say they're going to Alaska for work, or they're returning home from work, or whatever the case may be, that creates the necessity, and they're being pulled over in Banff while touring around Banff and shopping in the shops there, and there is no need for that. There will be opportunities. Obviously, things will get back to normal. Mm-hmm. But at this time, BC, we've done pretty darn good. Like I mentioned a few moments ago, probably one of the best jurisdictions, certainly on the continent, regarding, how we've managed the outbreak and how our recovery is going. And unfortunately, the south of us, they have not. And I think it's just something that, we need to be very careful about. And be very cautious about. So, like I say, fully understand and expect people traveling back and forth, but it's they shouldn't be making their holidays. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I want to switch gears now to talk a bit about how the legislature has changed, because it opened 2 weeks ago now. Session opened, I should say, and it had been closed, I believe, for 3-ish months kind of straight, basically. So there's plenty of new things kind of in store, because, again, the government's trying to keep everybody safe, with social distancing in light of the pandemic. Can you tell us some of the big things that have changed? Because there's only a few MPs kind of attending in person right now. Is that correct?
Yeah, so it's there's been a lot of changes, obviously. We call it a hybrid model, mm-hmm. is what we're calling it. So it's a cross between MLAs that are actually sitting in the legislature. I believe that there's a total of 24, 12 on each side. Mm-hmm. And then there's a few others that are in offices in Victoria, and that even are participating by Zoom in the legislature. And then the majority of MLAs are in their constituencies participating by Zoom. Now, it's interesting, we've all got used to technology now, probably, more than we would have ever imagined mm-hmm. over the past few months. I was a little hesitant, wondering how is this going to work? I mean, the legislature is a pretty dynamic place, when you've got a lot of moving parts, whether it be question period, whether there's banter back and forth, which obviously has completely changed. There's no heckling. I wanted to create little postcards I could hold up to heckle, but I'm not sure it wouldn't have the same meaning. There's just something about that lively banter back and forth in the legislature during question period. But it is working. There hasn't been too many glitches whatsoever. We've had a couple folks that couldn't get their mics off for whatever reason. So, but statements, pretty much procedures, and I would say the legislature is almost back to complete normal now in regards to doing our job. Now, you'd mentioned that we've been pushed back. We missed all of March, April, and May. So we're still doing that, but we're going to be doing it all summer now, right through to the middle of August. And that means resuming a number of bills. Actually, we were quite surprised how many pieces of legislation that the government has brought forward. We actually think they brought too much, and there's some stuff that just is unnecessary. But there's not a lot of time to debate a lot of this. So, and we're also still in budget debate. In fact, we had just barely got started. One of the first things I did when I returned to the legislature was complete my own budget debate on the education portfolio, which I'm ahead of. So, it is looking different, but it is working. So.
How is voting working? Because traditionally you have to be present in order to vote for things. Has that changed? Are people who are appearing via Zoom able to vote, or is there always kind of a representative amount of MLAs in so that, when votes happen?
Yeah. So voting obviously is different. That is something that is done in person. There's two types of votes. You've got your quick votes where everybody just moves legislation along quickly, as with usually a unanimous aye or a unanimous nay or whatever. But now we're holding up. We hold up a white piece of paper in front of the lens, or a white piece of paper with a black X. But whenever there is a division called, which meaning a vote that you want on the record, those would usually happen throughout the day. Bells would ring in the legislature, and MLAs would have 5 minutes to get into their seat, and then the vote would be cast. Of course, now in this world where everything is different, all division votes are pushed to the end of that day, and then you have 15 minutes to log onto your computer, and then a roll call is done, and you cast your vote. So it is done differently. And but again, I mean, overall, I think it is working pretty good.
Okay. I wanted to ask, because I know this legislature is pretty what's the word? It's divided pretty closely in terms of voting, right? So confidence motion, someone's laptop craps out at the wrong time, suddenly you might have an issue. But so it happens at the same time every day, which kind of gives everyone enough.
It does happen at the same time every day. But you're right. I mean, we're pretty much being held together by two votes. All it takes is, someone, when they're back in their home riding, to maybe take an extended lunch or to figure, there's probably not going to be a vote. I'm going to maybe do a little fishing trip or something, whatever. There is the possibility. There's no confidence votes. The only one confidence vote will be the vote on the budget. But other than that, if they don't win a vote, it's still embarrassing for government. And,
sure.
You start losing votes. You can call into question, can this government govern? So those are absolute concerns, and there's already lots of talk about an election, possibly this fall. There's been some hints dropped, so who knows? It's minority parliaments. We've probably outlived by far the average minority parliament right now.
Yeah, that unfortunately we're gonna have to leave that possible election stuff till next time. So
that's our next topic.
Absolutely, Dan. Thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us today.
My pleasure. Absolutely, my pleasure.
All right, we'll be right back to wrap things up right here on Moose Talks. You never know when your vehicle's transmission will break. S&J Automotive has been serving Fort St. John for over 10 years, with Shane being in the industry for over 35 years. They specialize in automatic and standard transmissions, differentials and drivelines, as well as general repair. They are committed to your satisfaction and go above and beyond to get to know you and understand your needs. Their shop is equipped with the latest technologies, and rest assured that you will get high-quality repairs on your vehicle. S&J Automotive is open Monday to Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Call 250-785-7172 to make an appointment or visit sjautomotive.ca.
V.E. Brandel has been serving the oilfield construction industry in Northeast BC since 1961 and have become one of the largest earth-moving contractors based out of Fort St. John. Their reputation is built on trust and quality of workmanship and have become a respected contractor in the oil and gas industry. They operate a well-maintained fleet of equipment and the use of TopCon GPS technology to build sites, ponds, and roads to design. V.E. Brandel has been a mainstream in the community for over 59 years and a strong supporter of all nonprofit organizations and First Nations programs. For your next earthwork project, contact V.E. Brandel, 250-785-2916.
Our community first. This is Moose Talks with Dub Craig on Moose FM.
Our thanks again to Dan Davies for taking some time out to talk to us today. If you missed this episode, or if you'd like to hear it again, you can download the podcast over at energeticcity.ca/Moose Talks. It will also be available in video form shortly on the Moose FM and energeticcity.ca Facebook pages. Well, that does it for this episode of Moose Talks for this week. Studio production was by Lindsay Cooper. Thank you, Lindsay. I'm Dub Craig. Until next time.
Join us next Friday at 10 a.m. for another episode of Moose Talks, a weekly talk show about Fort St. John and the North Peace.